Hi, I'm Amelia, and I'm Seedtag's Global Head of Growth. I'll be your host today for the fifth episode of Seedtag's podcast, Contextual 101. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Powell, who is Seedtag's CTO, and we'll be discussing the topic of AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning in advertising. So, Powell, over to you. Can you give us a brief introduction on yourself and what you do at Seedtag?
Cool. Thanks, Amelia, for having me today. So I'm Paul. Yeah, as you introduced me, I studied computer science engineering, and I've been at Seedtag pretty much since the beginning. So like 7 years ago, and took over the chief technology officer role 5 years ago. So my role is making sure that we're at the forefront of technology, we're building the right stuff, managing engineering, and all those kind of functions regarding technology and machine learning.
Yeah, quite a big responsibility then. So let's kick things off and discuss contextual AI and machine learning. So I was actually researching the topic and thinking about, okay, what exactly is AI? And the simplest definition that I found was that it is the science of making machines smart. Would you say this is correct? And what is your definition of AI?
Yeah. It's kind of correct. So for me, AI is giving machines these abilities that would normally be attributed to humans. So being able to reason, being able to learn, understand human language. It's about making these cold things, these machines, who behave in a very logic way, give them these more abstract kind of abilities that would usually be human, say.
Mm-hmm. So basically allowing machines to think in the same way as humans.
Kind of like that.
Okay, so the other word or definition we're discussing today is machine learning, and obviously we talk a lot about this in Seedtag's, positioning in our speech. What exactly is machine learning, and how does this work together with AI?
Right. So actually, like both words are used interchangeably nowadays, so it's kind of a bit blurred. But like the textbook definition, or like would be like machine learning would be a subset of AI. So it is the part that focuses on having machines learn from experience, rather than giving them a subset, of rules they should act upon. So, in traditional programming, you will give them these set of rules. If this happens, then you do that. If this other thing happens, then you do this. So in machine learning, what you do is that you start training a system to answer a specific question, like what's on this image or whatever. And you teach it by experience. So you start showing it examples until it figures out what it means that dog is on an image, for example. And so it learns based on experience rather than rules given hard coded by a programmer. So that's the difference.
Is it complex to train a machine to do this?
Right. So in that, definitely, it's going to depend on the kind of problem you're facing. But let's say on most real problems nowadays, training these and doing it correctly takes from tens of thousands to millions of examples. And you have to make sure that you're accounting for any kind of biases, and you're making sure that the result really makes sense. So it's really a hard thing, and much less deterministic than usual programming, where you just have a rule to fall back to if you don't understand why something is happening. So yeah, kind of hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. So thinking about this episode, I was actually researching, what exactly is AI and how does it affect us in our day to day. I actually found like multiple examples of AI in our daily lives. So thinking about smartphones, the fact that we have AI built into our smart assistants, the portrait mode on our camera, also smart cars, the fact that the world and a lot of auto manufacturers are moving towards new mobility solutions and being seen as more environmentally friendly. the fact is, AI is all around us. And actually, my favorite example was the Discover Weekly on Spotify. So obviously, AI is making the decisions of what we listen to, which sometimes is great. But I've actually discovered a ton of new artists based on the recommendations that are delivered to me. So there are lots of different examples of AI, but why does it seem so foreign to people? And sometimes when we're talking about AI, people sort of like roll their eyes slightly and it has a slightly negative connotation. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, I think that comes from, historically we've always heard this thing that machines are going to replace people in the workforce and stuff.
Mm.
So I think this is initially where it comes from, because you're totally right. Like there's this very negative thing to it. Then I think that like the newer reason for this is how because these big companies are using machine learning or artificial intelligence to do this large scale people analytic kind of thing. So there is this behind the scenes monitoring and data collection going on, which they're using for some purposes which we don't know about. The consumer doesn't have any kind of input into this. It's happening, without consent until GDPR, but even then, it's kind of a black box.
Mm.
So I think that's the reason why it has all this negativity, to it.
Yeah, yeah. I think people are always just a little bit afraid of what they're not sure about if there's an
Right.
unknown, right?
Exactly.
So, okay.
Exactly.
So moving on to contextual AI and advertising. What does contextual AI specifically mean and how does this work?
Mhm. So contextual AI is this new form of contextual targeting, which was done like years ago. So in contextual AI, we're understanding what the user is exposed to at that point, what he's reading, listening to, watching, whatever, and understand what the best time is for an advertiser to show their ad. So we're mixing both these things. On the one side, at what point in time the user is, what's his disposition to seeing a certain kind of ad, and then for different advertisers, what the best advertiser for a current situation would be. So in this sense, we're making sure that we're doing a match that is in real time between what the user is more interested in that point and what the advertiser can offer at that point in a messaging kind of sense.
Mm. So these are the use cases of contextual AI in advertising, you would
Yeah,
say, yeah, because it was,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I thought it was quite interesting because again, when I was looking into, what exactly are some use cases of AI currently, obviously placing ads in real time, which is the backbone of
Yeah.
cornerstone of programmatic. Writing and testing ad copy. So that was something that was quite interesting for me because I wasn't aware that actually, like Facebook, for instance, uses
Mhm.
this to write and test copy and distribute to consumers what is actually driving high performance. So again, there's
Right.
lots of different use cases of contextual AI.
You could be adjusting it, right? You could be adjusting it to the message, to the context where the ad is going to show up on.
Mm.
So, for example, if it's about the summer and it's high temperatures, you could use a different copy, or you could be using, you could be adjusting it based on what any kind of content, like what the video the user is seeing. So, and that is a great example. So, we're testing different approaches. Like you could be testing an A/B test, which you can enhance based on contextual AI. So yeah, there's lots of use cases for this.
Mm. And I guess one of the core benefits is, and something we'll come on to, is the fact that we can do this at scale. Because for a human to do
Right.
this, it would take us, months, weeks, years to be able to do the same
Exactly.
work. Okay, so in terms of contextual AI, why does it matter so much to advertisers now?
Mhm. So this has gained obviously a lot of it's second life. Contextual advertising has gained its second life because of all the privacy stuff that is going on. So obviously with cookies going away, not just in Chrome, which we've heard for now for a while, but Safari or Firefox or other browsers like eliminating third-party cookies, which are at the core of how advertising is done today. Now advertisers are looking for this new alternatives, and here is where contextual AI has gained a lot of momentum. First, because it's a completely privacy compatible alternative to cookies, and because also with all the new advances that been made in AI over the last couple of years, we can really go beyond what was again contextual advertising historically. So we can really understand much better how the content is positive or negative for a brand, what the proper content, the best content for a brand is, or so much more. So we start focusing more on where the brand is going to show up on, and less on mining user information and trying to guess who that is and shoehorn them into some kind of into some kind of segments. So this is like a really new way, because it's, even though it's historically been done for a while, this is really a completely different thing that was been done before, and that gives brands superpowers when we're speaking about their delivering their message and creating brand association with their values and so much more.
I love that. I love the way that you stated it gives brands superpowers. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thinking about ethics and transparency, is AI going too far in any way? Because, is it something that can be trusted by advertisers as well as consumers? Because there is some, online discussion that actually contextual programs don't give any insight as to how the algorithms actually work. So when this happens, obviously there raises a slight question mark as to what exactly is being tracked. But do you think
Right.
that contextual AI can be trusted fundamentally?
Yeah. So I think the fact that they're a bit obscure is because of what we spoke about earlier. Like these systems, you train them with examples, and then you don't really know how it's going to act, as much as you don't know how a person is going to act in a given situation. That this is going to depend on their background, their past experience. And there are no such rules where you can just refer to and say, oh, okay, if this happens, then it's going to do that. You don't really know. That's going to depend very strongly on how that AI was trained. So this puts a lot of burden on the company, or how it was trained, because you could be training very basic systems like these fairly easily. The barrier to creating these systems is not that high. What is difficult is accounting for all the different things that you should account for, and having the brand in mind on the kind of risks that you kind of expose a brand to if you're not doing this correctly. So really making sure that you're supervising the learning of the system correctly, that you're accounting for all the biases, that you are really training it in all the different circumstances that this machine learning system or AI system is going to find itself in. Accounting for all of that takes a lot of time. It's hard, as we mentioned. And going, that last mile, not just training it on something and just putting it out there, that's where trust is going to be, a core thing. But if done well, for me, this is actually much more consumer safe than, let's say, the historical means of doing advertising, because what we've seen is that companies were doing this large, they were following your movements, they were tracking all that information, they were building profiles, all of that stuff, which relies on companies having a lot of information, storing a lot of information about you. In contextual AI, none of this is there. There's no inherent security risks involved, because there is no information about you, or about your browsing history or anything. So done right, it's actually safer for consumer privacy than any of the other means that we've been doing in the industry before.
That makes complete sense. And just moving on, or tacking on to the variables that you've just mentioned, such as semantic analysis and being able to train the machines to be able to provide us with a highly granular output. What exactly is the level of accuracy that contextual AI can deliver? Because we talk a lot at Seedtag about semantic analysis and sentiment, but there are other signals that can be included within this, such as user location, device, time of day. I mean, what are your current thoughts around the accuracy of contextual AI?
Right. I think we can get, like, if done properly, we can get amazing precision accuracy when targeting, because we can account for, as you said, there's a lot of variables, and in other, like, trying to fit them into something that makes sense for targeting and doing that manually, it's really hard. And what machine learning gives us, or AI gives us, is the ability to mix all of them and have a really great output. So in that sense, yes, we can mix all these variables, as you said, like the tone of the article, for example, or we can mix what's on the images or what's on the video, or I don't know. There's so many things that we can that these kind of systems can account for that we would not be able to express, or would be very hard to express by other means. That we can really protect brands from all kinds of risks, very nuanced, and even for risks that might not have been accounted for because someone didn't specifically think about one risk that could show up on the web, and then you're suddenly seeing you might see your brand in there. But with contextual, if you're doing this right, these systems can extrapolate for all of that and really give a much larger protection than any of these rule-based systems, or any other means.
I feel that we've covered a lot of benefits of contextual AI. So, obviously protecting consumer privacy, targeting consumers when they're a receptive state of mind. I mean, what are the core, let's just say, 3 benefits of contextual AI?
The three benefits. So definitely, for brands, it's going to be making sure that they're showing up in the best possible context. So their brand is always going to be surrounded by really positive content, or really non-negative content. Let's say or at least the one that's more fit for them, because it's really going to depend on the public, on the advertiser. So they're going to be at the point where they really have to be, and where they're going to make the biggest impact on the consumer. So the second one would be privacy, definitely. We can make we don't need that much information, gather that much information about users and their interests, and then all of that to make really impactful and meaningful brand advertising. So definitely that has to be number two. And then for publishers, this is also going to be great for really high quality publishers. This is going to increase their monetization. I think this is going to also have a large impact on high quality publishers.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question, because we've talked about the impact of contextual AI on the advertising consumer, but what are the core benefits to the publisher? So, as you say, increasing monetization. Is there anything else that you can think of around this?
Yeah, so definitely for publishers, I think contextual is going to be good news for publishers, because this is really going to be about their content in a way. So I think as the industry transitions towards a more contextual buy, what we're going to see is these high quality publishers who are really putting effort into producing this high quality content, and putting the user first. I think they're going to reap big rewards for that. So because advertisers are gonna move away from low quality content, and all these contextual systems are gonna just deprioritize those and to put these high quality content first. So I think it's going to be on the monetization side, that's going to be super important, because they're really going to be able to differentiate their content from anyone else's. Today, if you're just doing intent, or you're going after individual users, you don't really care where you're impacting those. Or that's at least what we see in the industry. But if we're really going around focusing on the content and what the user is seeing, then this high quality content is going to be key. So on one side, it's going to be monetization. On the other side is really, I think, elevating the brand of the publisher in the eyes of the advertisers. So I think that's going to unlock very key conversations with advertisers, and I think that's going to be very beneficial for publishers, and also how they differentiate themselves from the walled gardens, and putting this high quality content, above user generated content from social networks, in the Facebook and so on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I actually read that the New York Times focused on a contextual advertising only sell for the European pages, and they actually didn't see a drop in revenue. So, yeah,
Right.
it proves that it does work. So, rounding off the episode and thinking about contextual AI, what are your predictions within this space?
Mhm. So yeah, I think in the near future, this is going to be about establishing what contextual AI really means. So what kind of capabilities do advertisers expect from these systems? What kind of precision they expect? What kind of things they can target? Really getting as much information from the web that can then be used for targeting. That's for me like the baseline, and I see lots of companies showing interest in this and lots of movement, smaller startups popping up and building things around this. So I think this is where like first step in as we transition again into contextual. And then for me, the next step is probably and making sense of all of this. So if there's so much stuff on the web and what's being talked about, then the next thing is for brands to understand, okay, how is my how do my ads impact users depending on the content they're showing up on, and what are the best places for me to advertise on. So I think that's probably going to be the next thing as we transition into this.
Great. Well, thanks, Pal. I think that's all we have time for today. I mean, I think it's safe to say that AI plays a large part of our everyday lives and is used online in a number of necessary use cases. So, obviously, we've talked about audience identification, building ad creative and testing optimization, but everything is done at scale. And specifically around contextual AI, this allows advertisers to target their messaging to consumers in real time based on that human-like understanding of the article page and knowing what is the most relevant ad to deliver at their point of interest. So obviously it's a win-win for all. We're respecting the consumer, we're respecting their right to privacy. So hopefully this will only build and be useful to advertisers in the years to come. So to our listeners, I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. Pal, it was great to have you on here.
Thank you very much.